is here in the studio with me, and that's because you say today you're going to take more kids out of poverty by giving more of them free school meals. Explain that.
Absolutely. So we're extending eligibility to free school meals to parents who are also in receipt of universal credit. The impact of that is that 500,000 more children will benefit. It will lift 100,000 children out of poverty. And critically, it will put money back into parents' pockets. So £500 per child per year. And this is because we as a government are determined to tackle child poverty. But we also want children to have a fantastic education. And if they're hungry, they can't concentrate, they can't learn as they should. So this will really help children at school, will really help parents putting more money back into their pockets. And this is the difference that a Labour government is bringing. People voted for change. We're delivering on it, and we're delivering on our mission to bring down child poverty.
So many questions arise from this, and you know that the Institute for Fiscal Studies has had a look at the numbers, and they say a couple of telling things I'd like to put to you. They say this will not see anything like 100,000 children lifted out of poverty next year. And they also say if your main interest as a government is to reduce child poverty, there are other measures, such as lifting the two-child benefit cap, that actually cost less per child to lift them out of poverty. Wouldn't you do better right now to eradicate that two-child benefit cap that you are currently sticking with?
So in terms of the IFS, we wouldn't accept that, and we'll be setting out further detail later today that will clarify the position, and we'll set that out.
So they're wrong, are they?
Yeah, I don't accept with their analysis, but there's additional information that will be published today that I think will help clarify that position for the IFS. But alongside that, the question you ask about wider social security measures. I'm co-chairing the Child Poverty Task Force with the Work and Pensions Secretary, Liz Kendall. We've been working with campaigners, with experts and others to look at all of the ways that we can lift more children out of poverty. We've always been clear that social security measures, such as the two-child limit, are on the table for discussion. So we will absolutely look at that. But
we were expecting your report in the spring, and it's been kicked back to the autumn. So that's 6 more months that people with more than 2 children on benefits are going to have to wait for potentially a benefit for the 3rd, 4th or 5th.
I understand the urgency, but equally we want to make sure that the strategy that we set out is full and comprehensive and covers all of the areas we think it's important to cover. I should say that, of course, social security reform is an important part of any child poverty strategy. But there are other levers too, and there are other really important ways we can support families. Take, for example, what we're doing around rolling out free breakfast clubs in our primary schools, the changes we're making around uniform costs, cutting those costs to parents, and also the increases in the minimum wage that we're delivering. This is all designed to support working families.
Well, let's talk about the minimum wage, because teachers, the headline is, in the past couple of weeks, you're going to give them 4% more money, but you're not going to pay for that 4%. They've got to find efficiencies. Is it the case that you think schools are not working hard enough, teachers are not productive enough, if they need to find an extra 1% of savings? It seems to a lot of parents that teachers are run ragged right now and schools are struggling.
Our teachers and our support staff in schools are doing an amazing job, and
But you think they could do better?
I think, like all areas of the public sector, we are having to ask for efficiencies to be made. So the position that we set out is that we received a recommendation from the peer review body, a 4% pay award for teachers. I've accepted that. We as a government have accepted that
because we know,
because we know the biggest way that we can improve children's education is by having fantastic teachers at the front of the classroom. The first 1%, we are asking schools to cover that cost. And the 3% that goes beyond it, we are fully funding.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt.
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy for schools.
Do you think they can find that 1%? It's a lot.
It is, and I'm not for one moment suggesting it's not without its challenges, but we are working with schools to do that. For example, we've got a programme underway that is helping schools to cut their energy costs around bulk energy buying. The schools that have been taking part in that have seen their costs cut by over a third. Those are the kinds of ways that we as a government want to work with schools to deliver those kinds of gains that they can then reinvest back into the workforce, because you want to maximise what you can spend on staff in schools, because that's the most important thing.
But the big teaching unions say this is going to put you on collision course with them. They expect a fully funded pay rise, and as you've explained there, it's not fully funded, so you're going to clash heads with them, aren't you?
Look, they've got a job to do. They're pushing for their members. I've got a job to do, and that's delivering for children in our country. Last year, we delivered a fully funded 5.5% pay award. That was difficult in the context of the public finances. This year it's 4%. I think that demonstrates that we want to make teaching a really attractive career. And we've done this quickly. We made the announcement accepting the recommendation for this year's pay way ahead of what previous governments had did. And the reason for that is we think if schools have got longer to plan, they can make better decisions. So they're going into the next year in a stronger position, but also having had the time to plan for it properly.
Stressful time for parents and teachers, GCSE time right now. I know from experience it's stressful. but particularly stressful at the moment for parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities. I want to ask you about this thing called the EHCP, the Education, Health and Care Plans. They're particular for kids with the likes of autism who need special provision. Now, some of your colleagues in the Education Department haven't been particularly clear about what's going to happen to them. People with children who are autistic and other challenges are really worrying about this. Can you reassure them that these EHCPs are going to stay in place and these children who have specific needs will still get them in state education?
So there's a bigger question of reform and then specifically on the EHCPs, and I will address that point. The starting point for me, where it comes to the system that we have at the moment for children with SEND, is that it's just not delivering the good outcomes that children need. That is the starting point. Better outcomes for children with SEND and making sure that we move away from this adversarial system that parents experience where it takes so long to get the support that you need. On EHCPs, no decisions have been taken about this. We're looking really carefully.
So they could change? They could be pulled?
We've not taken any decisions about that. What I want to make sure happens is that we put support in at the earliest possible point. So just to give a real and practical example, there are many schools across the country, not enough, and we're going to change that, where children get better support within mainstream, but specialist provision in mainstream. So, for example, for autistic children, including those with more complex needs, I've seen some amazing work that's going on where children get timely support, quicker support. They don't have to wait for diagnosis. They don't have to wait to go through a formal process. I think if we can speed all of that up, make sure that children are getting a fantastic education, that's what I know parents are focused on. But I do appreciate the concern where anyone talks about change in this area, that whilst there is an acceptance that the system isn't working, people are nervous and anxious about what change might look like. And I completely recognise that. And that's why the commitment that I give to parents, to campaigners and to groups working with parents is that I'm listening to them, we'll be working with them. And through that process, I'm spending a lot of time speaking to people who have real experience through their own children and campaigners too, to make sure that any change we get this right. Some people would also say we should be going faster, we should be moving harder on this.
Yeah.
Because they know the system isn't working, but there's a balance to strike, and that's what it's about.
This time next week, we will know what the Chancellor has outlined in her spending review, which is going to set what your department gets for the rest of the Parliament. Do you think, are you confident that education will get an above-inflation commitment next week?
You know that I won't be coming on this programme and pre-announcing...
You're smiling, so maybe it's good news.
I'm not going to get into pre-announcing the wider settlement. The Chancellor's got a tough job to do.
Yeah.
You know, she's been stabilising the public finances. We are now able to make different choices, like the decision today around free school meals. But where it comes to education, what we saw at the budget was that the Chancellor recognises the value and importance of investing in our children.
Are you still the party of
education?
education?
Absolutely, and I think our record to date as a government demonstrates the value that we've attached to education, putting it right back at the heart of national life, investing in our children, whether that's through breakfast clubs, through more funding to schools, and through the measures that we're setting out today around expanding eligibility for free school meals. Final
question for you, just changing tack a little bit, Bridget Phillipson, on weight loss drugs. We've seen this warning this morning that both women who don't want to get pregnant may get pregnant as a result of taking these because they diminish the contraceptive pill, and then also women who are pregnant being warned not to take the likes of Mounjaro, Wegovy, Ozempic and the many other forms. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's important that as the evidence emerges, we make sure that people are fully informed about both the benefits of weight loss medication, but also some of the risks associated with it. There is, of course, a role for those medications to play where it comes to people who meet the requirements for them, because I think it's very, very clear the impact around obesity can have, you know, on people's life expectancy, on much more besides. But as this is quite a new and emerging area, and therefore it's important that we all keep up to date with both the benefits and the risks, and of course doing that through medical advice.
Bridget Phillipson, good to see you. Thanks for coming, and look forward to seeing what happens in the spending review for your department come next Wednesday. For now, thanks a lot.